Paris is closed for the day. Few events can bring this city to a standstill. The start and end of wars, the jackboot of a conqueror, revolutions, and every year in the heat of July, a bike race. In continental Europe, the views of an Australian wrestling with the language are in demand. Here he's sought after, widely known, often quoted. Phil Anderson in Europe is a superstar of cycling. He's the first non-European to win a stage of the Tour de France, the first Australian to wear a yellow jersey in the Tour, the first Australian to lead a French team, lauded and feted abroad, yet curiously, a stranger in his homeland. Anderson's credentials are impressive. In 1983, he won Holland's most important classic, the Amstel Gold Race. He's won the Tour de l'Aude twice, one of France's top 5 tours. He was second in the inaugural Tour of America and second in the Swiss Tour de Romandie. In this continent, cycling is less a sport, more a way of life. And the Tour de France is the life force. The biggest annual sporting event in the world, an event to live with and through.
Whatever sport you follow, you all have your sport, which you say is the tops. But when you come to the Tour de France, it does supersede them all. I mean, to ride round France 22 days, to cover 2,400 miles, to project people who can ride 4 or 5 marathon athletics distances in a day, they are superstars.
In his first tour, Phil Anderson finished 10th and wore yellow for 1 day. In his second, he came 5th and wore yellow for 10 days. His aggression and courage, combined with experience, serves notice on the Europeans that here is a rider with the credentials to win this most sought after of all crowns, the Tour de France. A nomad from down under, beating the locals at their own game. Anderson sets out on his 3rd Tour de France, a pre-race favourite. On the other side of the world, few of his fellow countrymen are aware of this event, and fewer still the significance of his ranking. In the land of long distance, 2 wheels don't take you very far. Anderson, a foreigner, doing battle with 139 others, fighting heat, mountains, exhaustion, and the clock. A leading player in the world's longest piece of theatre. The last act to be played here 23 days later under the Arc de Triomphe. In much of the world, the bicycle is a child's toy. Although the oil crisis of the 70s certainly expanded its clientele, it remains essentially a leisure machine. But not in Europe. Here, everybody owns a bike. The bicycle is a machine which moved the father of the Tour de France, Henri Desgranges, to describe it as the first successful effort of intelligent life to triumph over the laws of weight. And age is apparently no barrier to its use. This social sporting club is on a day's ride through southern France, kitted up like the best pros. In France, however, they have their priorities. A day-long bike tour is fine, but where are we stopping for lunch? After all, the bikes will still be there later. but a fine French pastry. There's not much time for French pastry here. This is part of Phil Anderson's daily grind. A warm-up that begins on rollers and ends after hours on tracks and roads in the Belgian countryside. Phil is good. Commentators class him among the top 10 bike riders in the world.
Phil, like all Australians, is a nomad. When they come into Europe, they wander the world, and they do so well at it. I mean, he's going to be a very successful professional because he's got the aggressive temperament you expect. He's a particularly nice man, and he's got a nice wife too.
Phil and Anne Anderson live a pleasant life in the small town of Waregem in Belgium. Living here suits them. It's central to much of the continent's racing.
When I first moved up here, financially I wasn't in such a really good situation, and I found it a lot cheaper to live up here rather than in France. It was too fast a pace of life, it was too expensive. I visited Belgium a number of times and I found it a lot more comfortable up here. Another reason why we live up here is because there's a lot more racing. In France I could only race once a week with a team, but it means a lot of travelling. But here in Belgium it's a lot smaller country. There are races every day which I can ride. I don't need a team. If it's raining I don't have to ride. It's just like freelance racing. You can look in the newspaper in the morning. There'll be a list of races and I can pick out a race which is close by and go to that race.
Anderson is perhaps best remembered in Australia for his very gutsy and somewhat unexpected gold medal win in the 1978 Edmonton Commonwealth Games.
Well, it was a turning point in one way because I was heard of in Europe. I heard that there was a position vacant in a French club if I wanted to take it. And so I took up the challenge, threw caution to the wind, packed my suitcase and came over.
Anderson spends 5 to 6 hours a day on his bike, pushing up to 150 kilometers. Without this effort, and of course his talent, he'd be just an obscure member of the large professional contingent which races in Europe, many of them eking out a living. But obscure, Anderson isn't. It's difficult to be obscure when you're wearing yellow, the jersey traditionally worn by an overall race leader. This is the Tour de l'Aude, one of France's top 5 tours. It's a race over 4 days through the south, in territory which he'll cross again soon in the Tour de France. In 1981, this tour was Anderson's first major win, and he's leading today in the run home. Phil has ridden a long way in 5 years.
Yeah, I came over here in amateur in '79 and had quite a good year. You know, won quite a number of races, and in that time attracted quite a bit of interest from professional teams. But all the time I was saying, well, I want to stay amateur, ride the Olympics, you know, be faithful to my country and everything like that. The chances that I'd do well in the Moscow Olympics were pretty slim, you know, because it's like a lottery, really. A race like that's a one-day race, and I mean, all you have to do is flat, you know, have a puncture or fall. So, you know, I was considering turning professional, which I did in the end.
Anderson serves notice of his form as he romps in the winner with a substantial overall lead. Phil likes yellow. It's his colour. For Anderson, this tour has several purposes. It's a tune-up for the grueling Tour de France, and by doing well, he establishes solidly his claim as Peugeot's #1 rider.
It's good for my morale, it's good for my team's morale, because my team now have some confidence in me because they can see that I'm on good form. Also, I get a lot of publicity for it too, which is good for my team. And so I enter the team in good spirit.
In cycling, it's the mountains which arouse passions. At the turn of the century, riders were unable to pedal all the way up these steep climbs. Today, superfit professionals ride up as a matter of course. Anderson's never been strong in this region. It's a weakness he's working hard to overcome.
The difference between training and racing is when you're racing, you have to think. Training can be a form of relaxation as well, because you know, you're physically exerting yourself, but you don't have to be 200% concentration on what you're doing. You know? Your life isn't on the line like what it is racing. It can be very monotonous. Just riding for 5 hours, you know, wake up in the morning and say, oh, I dread it. another 5 hours at the meat works.
But superbly fit and mentally prepared, Anderson needs yet one other ingredient if he is to win the Tour de France. He must have the support of his largely French teammates.
Now, Phil has the drawbacks in as much that he isn't French, he isn't Belgian, he is actually a foreigner. No more foreign, in fact, than I am here, because if you speak the English language, you are a foreigner. But Phil has come to Europe at the time when the English language is making great progress in European cycling.
I think if I was a Frenchman, though, I'd get treated a little better, you know, I'd get better support from the team. But I mean, that's always improving. Like the first year, I didn't get much support at all, you know. But then last year came along, and I got the yellow jersey early in the tour, on the second day. But then they could see that I was quite strong and I could defend it. And by the end of the tour, they were really going strongly for me.
So Anderson's a natural. I suspect that he'll finish in the top 4 in the Tour de France. I don't think he'll ever win, but he's one of the best riders in the world. But he's not French, and if you're not French, you'll never get the 100% backing that if you were French, the team will give you.
Nevertheless, he's Peugeot's #1, the announced team leader whom the other riders will protect and help. Anderson, with their backing, has the best chance ever for a non-European to win the Tour.
Dans l'Amstel-Gold Race en début de saison, l'un des grands favoris du Tour de France 1983, l'Australien Phil Anderson. Cinq, 4, 3, 2, 1, top.
Day 1. The Tour de France prologue. A short time trial to establish who wears what jersey the following day. The start of the Tour proper.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1,
And immediately, the media machine devours the action, especially the Colombians.
Listo, Ferretti. El hombre se prepara. Vamos a ver, tenemos el conteo regresivo. Los últimos 5 segundos. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Partió!
The Colombians have a lot to be excited about. Their team, all amateurs, is the first from another continent to contest the Tour. Anderson is one of 5 riders listed as pre-race favourites. Today, this short 5.5-kilometre individual time trial on the outskirts of Paris is a short step on the long road to the Arc de Triomphe and the finish. 23 days from now. This year's tour covers 3,700 kilometers around France with 140 competitors and perhaps 20 able to win. Up there with Anderson as favourites are Joop Zoetemelk, a Dutchman, beginning his 13th tour. He won it in 1980 and has finished second an incredible 6 times. And Lucien Venim, 36 from Belgium. He's finished a record 13 tours. Even so, a little help from a friend is still welcome.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, stop!
It's only Anderson's 3rd tour. In 3 years, he's emerged from obscurity to one of the hottest chances ever for a win.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, stop!
At the finish, Anderson comes in 6 seconds behind the day's fastest, the Belgian, Eric van der Aarden, at 21, the tour's youngest rider. So now the tour has a leader. Anderson, staking a claim, is within striking distance in 4th place.
The Tour de France is a sports event. I think anyone will agree is the biggest annual sporting event in the whole world. And because it goes on for so long, because there are so many people watching it, probably an average of 1 million people every day for 3 weeks in the flesh, plus another 20 million or more watching it on television every day.
Stage 1 begins in Paris, and today the thoughts of France, if not all its eyes, are with a snaking column of two-wheelers and the gods who ride them. Paris doesn't exactly stop, but there's no other event which influences the city quite as much. For the French, today there is nothing else.
There is a philosophy in France. They say that you can do everything in July. The only point we care for French people is who is wearing the yellow coat. You know, you can change the government, you can change the republic, you can put some tax more, you can increase the price of train or electricity. They just don't care. They just look for the Tour de France and they think about other things after. You know.
Within the event, the riders are almost incidental, pawns in a huge organization. Everything about it is big, its backup, the sheer scale of the race. This is one of the world's giant sports circuses.
Race entourage, there's some 2,000 people following the race around, 300 or 400 journalists writing about it every day. Nothing really compares.
Ironically, the world's biggest event is reported by people who don't actually see it. The world's media are either ahead or behind the riders, so reporters rely heavily on interviews after each stage to get their story. Remorselessly, they extract small bits of information and distill them nightly into stories for the world.
The people is watching not only because it's a race or it's sport, it's because they are sometimes crossing a place where they come from. You know, in France, in Paris, there is nearly 10 million people, but they are all coming from a part of France, and every day they watch because maybe this is a house, this is a town, this is a village. You know, everybody has done cycling in France. When you are young, you buy a bike, and everybody knows it's very difficult to do it. So that's why it's very popular.
Stage 2 is a team time trial. Like the prologue, a race against the clock, but in this stage working as a team. Each rider taking turns up front to slice through the wind, keeping up the pace. The Tour is now heading north towards the Belgian border through undulating countryside. It's It's a grueling 100 kilometers and there's no room for passengers. The strong pull the weak hang on. The rest of France, well, it's still stopped. The Tour is a complex event. In effect, a series of races within a race. Each day's stage is a complete race in itself and has its own prize money. As well, each rider's daily times are added together, and the rider with the shortest time is the overall leader in the yellow jersey. This 100-kilometer team time trial was won in brilliant style by the Coupe Mercier team in just under 2 hours and 19 minutes. That's an average of 43 kilometers an hour. Peugeot had a great day. Pushing hard, they finished second, just 17 seconds slower. But not everybody, in Phil Anderson's opinion, had been working as hard as he might. And there was a strong hint of displeasure.
It was only really Steve, myself, and Robert working in the end, you know? Yeah. It's a bit hard, you know? Still, everybody was... You know, everybody's coming through, I think, if they can, you know. Yeah. I've had troubles with the team. I mean, the strongest rider is as strong as the weakest rider, you know. You can't really pull away from him. Yeah.
Despite the large number of riders in this 23-day war of attrition, most tours are dominated by one rider. In recent years, these leaders have included Eddy Merckx, the greatest of all time, nicknamed the Cannibal for his insatiable appetite for victories. This man, now retired, has most days in the yellow jersey, 96, most stage victories, 34, and is also the only man to win in a single tour the sprint, mountain, and overall leader jerseys. And there's Bernard Hinault, missing this year because of tendinitis, who's already won the Tour 4 times, worn yellow on 55 days, and won 22 stages. And he's still riding. Men like those could control packs this size. They stopped pointless attacks which wore down riders of ability with some real chance. This Tour has no such leader. The velodrome in Roubaix, the finish of the 3rd stage. Rudy Matthijs of Belgium crosses first, with Phil Anderson nowhere in sight. He eventually walked his bike across the line, looking the worse for wear.
Two guys went down and he tried to avoid him, but he couldn't. And they just crashed over there.
The fall hadn't cost Anderson any time, as it had occurred within the velodrome. But Anderson felt Van der Aarden should pay some price for the manoeuvre which brought him and the others down. A wayward manoeuvre which cost the French champion, Gomez, the rest of the Tour.
Van der Aarden should be given a penalisation for that. You think so? On the track, eh?
Well, what did he actually do?
What did he do? 70 metres from the line, eh? You don't swing up like that.
He just swung up, did he?
Yeah.
What he did, and Gomez went into him.
Yeah, Gomez was just over him, and he went down. Then well, with him, me, and then 4 or 5 others. Yeah.
Meanwhile, Anderson did don yellow, but it was Kim, the Dane, not Phil, the Australian.
Demandez, réclamez le souvenir inoubliable du Tour de France. Regardez-le rouler, regardez-le évoluer. Il est mécanique et de précision, monsieur.
A day in the life of the Tour de France circus starts early, and everybody's in the act.
Regardez-le rouler, regardez-le évoluer à l'arrière des podiums. Papa, maman.
In the nearby hotels, the riders who have a minimum sleep requirement of between 8 and 12 hours are barely stirring. Nevertheless, there's a blood pressure check, part of the daily routine. Commercialism is an integral part of the Tour. It sells everything from newspapers to mineral water. Everything, that is, except cigarettes. This mobile commercial precedes the riders each day for the whole 3,700 kilometers. At the hotels, the riders begin fueling up for the day, literally. Because of their huge energy requirements, the riders eat as if it's their last meal. A good rider is one who can force food down, even when he doesn't feel like it. Because not to eat can result in a lack of strength sometime later in the day. This force feeding in the morning results in riders literally eating 2 meals at breakfast. There's the usual breakfast fare, followed almost immediately with a good lunch. Usually steak, rice, and anything else loaded with energy-supplying carbohydrates. Stomach capacity appears to be a vital factor in a rider's performance. If you don't eat, you can't perform. Breakfast and lunch over, the formalities of the race begin to dominate the day. But even then, and with 2 meals slowly settling, obviously, you have to have a little extra to see you through the first leg of the day's stage. Then, of course, there's the media corps, waiting for its daily fix of fact and rumor. And always there's a reminder that in this event, time is your enemy. It would be a mistake to think that all day, every day is hard competitive racing. It's simply not possible. Before the day gets too serious, the nicely insulated pack develops a sort of social life of its own. Dotted throughout most stages are rush sprints. By winning these, a rider can get up to 12 seconds lopped off his overall time. For a leading rider, these are valuable bonuses. These sprints are weary, and they become pointless if they tire the rider to the extent that he falls off the day's pace. And always, of course, you have to keep eating. Each team in the Tour has 10 members, and they work much the same as a small military unit. The leader is protected. When he punctures, one of the team will pass him his own wheel or even bike, wait for him if necessary, and shepherd him back through the pack. The whole team keeps a sharp eye on any breakaways. Some matter, some don't. Today, Swiss champion Serge Demier had dropped everybody off, but he started the day nearly 23 minutes behind the overall leader. A stage win of a few minutes was no cause for concern for the leaders. The day had been a long, debilitating test of endurance. Nearly 300 kilometers with 8 rush sprints. Today followed 150 kilometers yesterday, and there'll be another 250 tomorrow.
It's like normal 8-hour day, eh? 9 to 5. We didn't stop for lunch though.
The racing cycles are marvelous precision machines, and a small army of assistants work long into the night, cleaning and repairing and changing gears to accommodate the requirements of the next stage. Keeping these wheels turning is straightforward enough. A new tire, an adjustment, a new part here and there. But coaxing back to life the machine that pushes those wheels is a different proposition. The masseur is a linchpin in the pro rider's ability to survive. The magician who conjures up willing flesh for the following day.
Well, Phil has had a very sensible, intelligent first week. Last year, when he had the yellow jersey after 2 days, he expended a lot of energy in defending it, sprinting for every intermediate sprint. This year, Phil has kept his place up at the top of the leaderboard by just going for 1 or 2 of these sprints, not every one. And because of that, and his consistently good form, he's up in 3rd place, which is an ideal position to be in.
Wilcoxon's assessment of Anderson is echoed by other veterans. But there's another 2,300 kilometres yet to go, and for Anderson to emerge from this bunch as a clear leader will require endurance, sheer guts, a lot of support, and some luck.
He's much fresher, he's got a great ambition, and I think he's going to win the race.
Paris to Pau, 9 stages, 1,600 kilometres, 42 hours, 6 minutes, 38 seconds in the saddle. But so far, hardly a mountain. The outlook at this stage was bright for the Tour's English-speaking riders, as the daily ritual of jersey presentation showed clearly. Apart from the stage winner, Frenchman Philippe Chevalier, Sean Kelly, already in the green leading sprinter's jersey, took the all-important yellow by 1 second from the Dane Kim Anderson. Top junior rider in the white was Stephen Roche, another Irishman. Only the distinctive red polka dot King of the Mountain jersey was held by a Frenchman, Gilbert Duclos-Lassalle. Anderson was in 3rd place, just 4 seconds off the lead. 130 riders were still in it, but the fluid nature of this tour de force and the onset of the mountains was about to inject the dose of unpredictability for which this race has become legend. The Pyrenees, the formidable barrier between France and Spain, even more so when viewed from the saddle of a bike. The roads are man-killers. They're tortuous, thin slivers of sun-baked tarmac, climbing, ever climbing into thinner air. And here from all over France they come, hundreds of thousands of fans, perched precariously on hillsides and spilling into roads not designed for them. This obsession with mountain climbing sees the hordes camp overnight and then wait hours to see a few minutes at most of the agony which in years gone by prompted riders to shout "assassin" at tour organizers. The fans, as if to distract from the suffering, scream encouragement. This territory in cycling terms represents true grit. This is where tours are won or lost. The Pyrenees section is a 198-kilometre savaging with 4 steep climbs, the steepest of which, the Tourmalet, involves climbing 1,400 metres over a distance of 18 kilometres. For the best climbers, the suffering is said to approach the last rounds of a boxing match. For the others, it's worse. Anderson is traditionally not strong in the mountains, and they again proved his nemesis.
For Phil, it started very badly because on the first climb, he crashed and his shoe came off, which was a bit of a disaster because he was left sitting in the road trying to undo a double knot on his shoe. None of his teammates waited for him, and it took him a long time to get back up to the front. And he didn't finally make it until the approach to the second big climb, the Tourmalet. But Phil was quite happy because he was with guys like Van Imp and Zoetemelk, Bernardo, who was climbed the next climb with them, while Kelly and Anderson, the Dane, were both dropped. And this made Phil the actual race leader. If he'd stayed in that position to the end of the stage, he'd have had the yellow jersey, which would have been fantastic. And just at this point, one of Phil's teammates, Pascal Simon, who's a 26-year-old Frenchman, he suddenly attacked without telling Phil, without telling Stephen Roche, who was with them, and took them completely by surprise. And because he was a Frenchman, he got away with it. And at the end of that day, Simon was in the yellow jersey.
Yes, because on my point, Simon is better than Anderson in a tour.
Pascal Simon acknowledges his yellow jersey. Teammate Robert Miller on the dais for winning the stage. Lucien Van Imp claimed the coveted polka dot climbers jersey. All this while Anderson was still struggling home, now nearly 9.5 minutes behind the leader in 10th place.
You know, on the last climb there, Kelly's group caught us and they were going a bit too fast for me, so...
It's pretty hard on me, really, because I'm leader of the team and then somebody does that to me, you know. When I'm having a bad day, it's like stabbing somebody in the back or stepping on them, you know. I know the director wouldn't be very happy and the press certainly wouldn't be very happy if I attacked a Frenchman in my own team and stuff like that.
The next day, the French public, oblivious to Anderson, was hailing Pascal Simon as the new French Revolution. The French commentators saw Anderson's plight philosophically.
Anderson is considered as an individual man, a little. It's not always, they say, that Anderson is not always playing the team spirit. And cycling, it's an individual sport, but you can win only by team. If you have a good team, you can win the Tour de France. If you are alone, you cannot win. And Anderson was not in a team where everybody was working for him.
So Peugeot had a new team leader, Pascal Simon. Anderson was now required to ride and protect Simon. He was saddled with housekeeping chores, picking up refreshments, chasing breakaways, protecting Simon, maintaining and withholding pace as the need arose. But today, fate struck another blow, this time directly at Simon and so indirectly at Anderson.
Pascal fell off and bucketed his shoulder, eh? So I had to push him all the way, goddammit.
At the end of stage 11, the media had a field day. Simon had a hairline fracture of the left shoulder blade. Zoetemelk, lying 5th, failed a dope test and was penalized 10 minutes. Anderson was languishing in 9th place. The 12th stage. Pascal Simon fronted for the start despite his injury. But he couldn't last, could he?
Now, if I'd have been a team manager, I would have gone and looked at what we have behind Simon to back him up, knowing that in 2 or 3 or 4 days, Simon must retire.
The procession continued. Simon, wincing at every pothole, managed to stay in the race, dragged along by his team. For Anderson, Simon was an anchor.
Yeah, you say
Helen
has Coke.
Along the route, Phil's wife Anne was there to do what she could.
Oh, Mom has Coke!
But as so often in this race, the best laid plans come to zero.
Oh, shit! I missed, I threw it.
And as a reminder to Phil, Kim Anderson, the Dane, pulled off a 12th stage win, underlining the absence of the Australian's name from the daily placings. It was frustrating stuff, fit enough to attack, but unable to, through having to look after an unfit leader.
It wasn't easy sitting back though, it was quite hard, you know. Once the Wolver started chasing, it was quite difficult.
And as Anderson watched Simone struggle painfully into the yellow for the 3rd successive day, how much longer?
The accident of Pascal Simon changed a lot of things because nobody wants to attack Pascal Simon, because if you attack Simon when he was hurt, you know, you are going to be unpopular. So you cannot beat a man which is at the ground, and everybody waits for Pascal Simon to go out of the race.
Drama has always been an ingredient of the Tour. In the very first Tour in 1903, there were 60 starters. 20 finished to prove that mere humans could ride for 20 days without inevitable death. Early tours were also much more bitterly contested. Some competitors had allies who scattered nails along the route to give them a bit of an edge. Cheating was rife. Riders even hopped trains, or were towed along by all but invisible steel wires. Today, much has changed, and yet some parts of those early days remain. The Tour continues to be a sort of monastic two-wheeled procession, as women are frowned upon. The origin of this chastity can be traced to the Tour's founder, Henri de Grange, who believed that riders had to eat, sleep and breathe cycling, particularly sleep. He was called the Trappist of the sport, and his attitude to women is still reflected to some extent today. To replace the women, there is now money, honor and glory. So you keep climbing and finishing for as long as you can, while you hold off age and tendinitis and injury. So another stage finishes. Simone still in yellow, just. Anderson still there in the first 10. But even Simone's teammates can now see the writing on the wall. Stephen Roach.
Simone, today he had it very, very sore, so I don't know really what's going to happen now. I was very confident before, but now when I see him today, I think it's maybe 50-50 that he'll go on, you know. Tomorrow okay, but Sunday I don't know.
Simone's ordeal has captured the imagination of the French, eager for a sporting hero in this hot summer. And each night there's a special cheer as he finishes yet again. The Puy de Dôme, an extinct volcano in central France, and it's today's destination. An apparently short 16-kilometer individual time trial, but a grueling climb all the way, a sort of uphill sprint. Anderson, for the first time in a week, is not shackled by the need to protect Simone. And here on the edge of a sun-baked road that leads to the top, an estimated 500,000 people. At a point two-thirds along the route, and after climbing about 400 meters, Anderson was well up. But as the incline got steeper, he weakened. This was territory for the climbing specialist, and no place for Anderson to begin a comeback. Phil dropped nearly 4 minutes. Simone clung to the yellow by the skin of his teeth after not being able to make a real effort out of the saddle. This was tough enough for a fit man, but for a man with a cracked shoulder blade?
They stayed with Simon. They decided that when he's gone, the Tour is finished for them. They didn't look back and say, well, look, Anderson can take over. Let's at least let him attack. Let's suffer the publicity that he's attacking his own team leader, but let's take all the publicity, good or bad. Instead, they wrote themselves into Simon, and at the same time, they wrote Anderson out of this Tour de France.
After a week of dancing to Pascal Simone's tune, the race today developed a new character as the Alps finally persuaded the Frenchman to abandon the Tour. Today's 223-kilometer stage would finish at Alpe d'Huez, a ski station 1,800 meters above sea level. The final 13 kilometers rising 1,100 meters. The spectators do their best, but it's small comfort. Anderson, finally free of any responsibility to Simone, was doing okay today. He paced it well and, despite the mountains, held his overall position. The finish today saw the emergence of a slightly built young Parisien in his first Tour take the overall lead. Laurent Fignon, at 22, was getting due reward for consistency and, to an extent, cunning rather than strength. The French, fond of revolutions, had discovered yet another conqueror, and he would lead his troops all the way to the Champs-Élysées. For 23 days, Paris has waited. Not with bated breath, perhaps, but with an air of expectancy this lady always reserves for her conquering heroes. Crowds trickle in from early morning to line the major routes, tucked in behind what appears to be the entire French gendarmerie. Well, 3,000 of them anyway. While Paris prepares, the riders do a final 195-kilometre stage. Destination, the Champs-Élysées and the Arc de Triomphe. This grand lady of a city, with patriotism in abundance, reserves the world's most glorious finishing straight exclusively for these men. The Champs-Élysées didn't become the final ceremonial altar until the mid-70s. The number of spectators who turned out then was so large, the two-wheel pageant has finished here ever since.
All the guys who came to the start felt they could win this Tour de France. 20 winners. And now you can never predict that situation ever happening for maybe a quarter of a century. So they all thought, this is it. The chance to make a fortune, to go home popular. I'm going to win the Tour. What's happened? You've had 6 different leaders. You've had something like 12 nations win stages in the Tour de France. And you've seen riders who should have won this Tour normally drop out because they're exhausted, trying to contend with all the attacks. It's a fabulous Tour de France, probably the best I've ever seen. I've seen 12.
And so, after 23 days, the Tour arrives. The pack of riders sealed, the chance of successful breakaways remote. The entry into Paris is too prestigious. Fignon has started the day with a lead of more than 4 minutes on his nearest rival. He only needs to finish to become the youngest rider for 19 years to win. A new French hero after 105 hours, 7 minutes and 52 seconds in the saddle. A Tour which, despite the absence of one single dominant rider, would be the most talked about for many years. Anderson crossed the line in 6th place for the stage, 9th overall. But Anderson's experience during this Tour led quickly to speculation about his future with the Peugeot team.
I think I'll find another job though,
Another job or another team?
Another job.
Another team.
Oh no, I don't know.
Huh?
I haven't decided yet.
He eventually did, ending a 4-year association with Peugeot. He's now leader of the Dutch rally team, sponsored by the Japanese Panasonic company. And what about his performance? Well, if his 9th overall appears disappointing, it's worth making some points. True, he did not once stand on a dais, but he still came home his team's leading rider. And what happened to the yellow jersey winners? Eric van der Aden, in yellow for 2 days, didn't finish. The Coupe Mercier's team Jean-Louis Gauthier, in yellow for 1 day, finished 76th. Kim Anderson, the Dane so much in the spotlight, wearing yellow for 6 days, managed only 28th. Pascal Simon, the teammate who attacked Anderson and wore yellow for 7 days, did not finish. Apart from Fignon, only Sean Kelly, in yellow for 1 day, did better, and he finished just 2 places ahead of Anderson. Laurent Fignon wore yellow for the last 6 days. Of the 140 riders who originally started, only 87 were there to see this final presentation.
You know, I'm going to be here to win the Tour one day, and I don't know if it's going to be next year or the following year, but I'm going to win it someday.